VR has been around for quite a while now, and depending on who you ask and how you define it, it could trace back to the 90s, the 80s, the 60s, maybe even further than that. But I think most people would agree that the real modern age of VR started with Oculus. The dev kits that Palmer Luckey and his team built, that John Carmack helped refine, and that Facebook eventually took to market as the Oculus Rift. And while that might not feel like it was all that long ago, it really has been. I mean, we're talking over a decade now, which in tech or in gaming is basically forever. And in all that time, I've never seen a VR game hold on to a consistent player base or start to look like a real esport the way that Echo VR did. It had everything that people wanted. Cool new mechanics, online multiplayer. It was well designed, it looked great, it was fun, and people loved it. But right as it was hitting its stride and right as people were planting the flag and calling it the first true VR esport with tens of thousands of daily players, it got shut down. And like a lot of you, I never really fully felt satisfied with why that happened. Why would Meta take a game that so many people loved and just pull the plug on it? So today I want to take a closer look at what happened to Echo VR and see where it all went sideways. The story of Echo VR actually starts in a different game. Ready at Dawn was deep in development on Lone Echo, a single-player VR game where you play as a robot drifting around space near Saturn. And around halfway through that production, they did a game jam. Basically, a week where the devs from the team put a real project down and just build whatever they want. Two of the gameplay leads grabbed the floating zero-gravity movement from Lone Echo and used it to throw together a little multiplayer game. And when the rest of the team got around to playing it, they loved it. The art director Nathan Fail-Liff said it was like lightning in a bottle, and that Oculus almost greenlit it on the spot. Both games ended up shipping the same day, July 20th, 2017, on the Oculus Rift. Lone Echo, the single-player story, and Echo Arena, the multiplayer one. That multiplayer game, Echo Arena, is the one that would later be renamed Echo VR. But at launch, it was Echo Arena. It won awards, and back then when VR was barely past the tech demo stage, it actually worked and was fun. But there was a ceiling for Echo. Echo Arena was free, but you could only play it on the Rift, which meant that you had to have a decent gaming PC, that specific headset, and deal with everything else that came with it. So the crowd stayed small, loyal, but small. And a sport needs players. Then in 2020, the Quest fixed the one thing holding Echo back: cheap, standalone VR. The Quest 1 did come out in 2019, but Ready at Dawn needed some time to get it running on standalone. Once Ready at Dawn brought the game over, Echo Arena officially became Echo VR. Still free to play, and now anyone who picks up a Quest can just put it on and jump in. That's when it stopped being a thing that a few PC players knew about and turned into, by most accounts, the best performing VR game that Meta had. And that flood of new players turned Echo into something that almost no other VR game has ever become since: a real esport. Not in the buzzword way that people throw that word around, an actual one. There was a whole league, the VR Master League, with seasons and divisions and the promotion and relegation setup you'd see in real sports. There were even Echo VR World Champions. Matches went out live on Twitch, and you could also watch them inside VR, in a virtual arena called Oculus Venues, an entire stadium of floating avatars watching the same match together. And people built their lives around it. Teams, friendships, rivalries, whole identities. For years, people had been waiting for the VR game that felt like real competitive gaming. Echo had become that. The closest VR had ever come to having a sport of its own. But the same thing that made Echo explode also made it kind of brutal. It was free, it was open, anybody could jump in, and a lot of people who jumped in were screaming children. The lobbies got rough. Slurs, shrieking, and the kinds of things that make you just want to rip your headset off. Plenty of players muted voice chat entirely just to get through the matches. New players trying to join in on the fun would load in, get screamed at for missing a pass, and never come back. Echo, like a lot of multiplayer games, had a toxicity problem, and Meta never got a handle on it. Which does matter a little bit, because a game that can't hold on to the people it pulls in is a game that stops growing. On January 31st of 2023, Ready at Dawn announced they were shutting Echo VR down. The servers would go dark on August 1st. In spite of the little community issues, this was not some dead game getting put out of its misery. Echo was by any standard the most popular thing of its kind in VR, with a loyal community and a league that was still going. It was a healthy game as far as anybody could tell, and it was being shut off. The reason that they officially gave was basically, we have to move on. The team needed to focus on the next project, and they needed, quote, all hands on deck. On its own, that sounds kind of reasonable. Studios do move on after all. But the timing of it was weird. The day after that announcement, Mark Zuckerberg was on Meta's earnings call telling investors that 2023 would be the company's year of efficiency, and that Meta was going to get a lot more aggressive about cutting projects that weren't performing. So Echo VR died in the same week that Meta started swinging the axe across the entire company. At the time, it seemed like the community could feel that something was off because they fought harder than people usually fight for a video game. There was a petition that shot past 30,000 signatures, a Discord called Fight for Echo, a whole website called SaveEchoVR.com running a boycott. And what they asked for wasn't unreasonable. They basically said, if you don't want it, fine, but just leave the servers up, or just hand us the code and let us run it ourselves. And by now, you're probably thinking what I was thinking, that this has to be about money. The game must have been just bleeding cash. That's the real reason, right? Nope. And we don't even really have to guess, because Meta's CTO Andrew Bosworth answered it directly in an Instagram Q&A. Somebody there asked if there was any way to save Echo VR, and the answer was no. And the reason had nothing to do with money. The way Bosworth put it, this was not like a return on investment money standpoint. Yeah, the player base had shrunk to the low tens of thousands, but that was never the issue. The issue was the people at Ready at Dawn. What he wanted was the return on the human capital, the people that could be doing something that's going to affect millions of people. So they didn't kill Echo because it was losing money. They killed it to pull developers off of it and point them at something else. And even Meta's own in-house legend told them not to. John Carmack, the guy who made Doom and Quake, who Meta paid a fortune to be the conscience of its VR effort. Bosworth admitted flat out that John would not have shut down Echo VR. His whole position is that games are worth keeping alive the way that people still run Quake servers decades later. Killing something that people love on a bet that you might build something better someday, to him was a bad trade. But it does kind of leave this lingering question. If you were willing to kill Echo just to pull the developers off of it, what was that thing that you were willing to kill it for? The project was never named, not then and not now. We only know anything about it because Andrea Pacino, the other co-founder, talked about it years later. He said it was supposed to be one of the biggest, most ambitious VR games they had ever attempted. But the team that was supposed to build this big, ambitious thing was already getting taken apart. 2 months after they shut down Echo VR for the All Hands project in April of 2023, Meta laid off a third of Ready at Dawn. They shut down a beloved game, told everybody it was because they needed every available person for the next thing, and then cut a third of the people. Pacino said those layoffs were devastating, and that he knew right then the studio was finished. So the new project went into slow collapse, a shrinking team chasing a giant idea, but none of that changed Echo's fate. On August 1st, right on schedule, the servers went dark. But then the story takes a positive turn. A programmer who goes by Xenomega reverse engineered Echo's servers from scratch, which completely flew in the face of something that Bosworth had said about why they couldn't open source it, because it was too deeply entangled in Meta's systems. One person who didn't even play the game rebuilt the server stack in under a month. The game could live without Meta. Meta just didn't want to let it. In August of 2024, Meta closed Ready at Dawn for good. The whole studio, 21 years old, just gone. In 4 years under Meta, they never shipped a single game built for the Quest. The developers Bosworth wanted to redirect toward affecting millions of people got scattered, and then they got cut. Talking about this game and this story, it's hard not to see Meta as the villain on this one. Maybe nobody there hated Echo. Maybe nobody plotted to kill it. But it doesn't really matter because Meta owned all of it. They had every lever available you could pull to keep this thing alive, and they pulled none of them. You can say that it's just business, but they said it wasn't about the money. The man who built it is a little bit more forgiving on this than I am. Looking back on the studio he gave more than 20 years to, now gone, wouldn't even call it a betrayal. He just said, I'm not criticizing them. From my perspective, it seems a waste more than anything else. But maybe not completely a waste, because the people who made Echo didn't just disappear. A bunch of them landed at the studio behind Gorilla Tag, and they started building a new zero-gravity game called Orion Drift. Basically a spiritual successor to Echo. It's still in early access, so nobody really knows what it's going to be like yet, but at least part of the original team is still chasing what Echo started. And the real original Echo didn't fully die either. Those fans who rebuilt the servers kept them running, and you can actually still float around in a real match today. The catch on that is that you have to really want to. There's no button for it on the Quest store now. You sideload it, you patch it, you jump through a bunch of hoops, and the community has the game locked on one specific version, telling everyone not to update past it. So it just sits there like a time capsule, the same game it was the day that Meta walked away from it, with a fraction of the players it used to have still floating around inside. And that's where Echo is now, not really gone, but not really alive either, stuck in time in a corner of VR most people don't know how to find. If you ever played Echo VR, I would love to hear your story about it. Were you in a league? Did you have a team? Do you remember where you were the day that the servers went dark? And how do you feel about Meta's handling of it? Let me know down in the comments, and if you're new here, thanks for hanging out with me and listening to me talk about VR. But for now, I think I'll see you guys in the next video, where we talk more about where VR went sideways.
5, 4, 3, 2,